Before we start the meeting, just a reminder, we're following the rules of the governor's executive order for remote meetings for government entities and agencies. This meeting will be recorded. If you choose to participate and say something, that is your consent to be recorded and have it rebroadcast. These are will be placed on the town YouTube channel for your reading enjoyment or watching enjoyment at a later point. If your Netflix account falls behind or something, you're welcome to view that. So I think it is, I have 5:01. We'll call the meeting to order. Paul, as secretary, could you please take the roll?
Certainly. Rich West.
Present.
Natalie Ricciardi. Natalie Ricciardi.
Present.
Paul de Benedictus. Oh, Sally's present. Okay. Paul de Benedictus is here.
Tom Uhas is here. Do you have me?
I do now. Karen Schumann. Okay. And Sue McIntyre.
Here.
All right. Everyone is present except Karen Schumann.
And I believe there's a school board meeting this morning or this evening, so I don't know what time that is, but
There she is.
Sorry, guys, I was on the phone with the DOE. So.
Do you have a note, Karen?
I wish.
Okay. Everyone is present.
That might get me out of a lot of things if I had a note.
Paul, do you have me?
Yes, I do, Tom.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
okay, moving on. Approval of the minutes. Paul had circulated copies of the minutes from our May 18th meeting. If you have reviewed them and if no one has any corrections or adjustments, I would appreciate a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That was a quick.
Tom, your picture popped up on the screen right away, and I said, "Oh no." Okay. Okay. So, can I get a motion on the minutes for the May 18th meeting?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the May 18th meeting.
I'll second. Tom.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been made by Sally, seconded by Tom Uhas. Paul, could you poll the commission?
Roll call alphabet by last name. Paul Benedictus, aye. Sue.
Aye.
Sally.
Aye.
Rich.
Aye.
And Tom.
Aye.
Okay,
All ayes.
thank you. Thank you, Paul. Moving on, under the financial reports, I circulated a copy of the cash flow statement, which reflects the anticipated claims to be approved this evening. I don't know if there were any questions on that. It didn't go out till late. Sorry about that, but I couldn't do it till I had planned. So unless there are questions on that, we'll pass that. Karen had circulated the May financial statement. Are there any questions about the May financial statement? If there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the May financials.
I'll make the motion to approve May financials as they stand.
Okay, this is Paul. I will second that.
Okay, so we have a motion that was made by Tom Uhas, seconded by Paul de Benedictus, and Mr. Secretary, could you please poll the members?
Certainly. Again, alphabetically, Paul.
I'm sorry, did you say Sue? You cut out.
Yes, Sue, your turn.
Yes.
Okay. Sally
Yes.
and Rich
Yes.
and Tom.
Yes. Aye.
Okay. All ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to the claims. Karen had circulated the claims for June. Were there any questions about any of the claims as presented?
Yeah, Karen, are you on? This is Paul. Are you on the line? Okay,
Karen.
Rich, I just,
Sorry, I'm
the
here.
Bridge Collective. Okay, the Bridge Collective. That's in support of the website development. Is that what Bridge Collective is? I saw that on the summary.
No, the Bridge Collective is the mural painters for the Firehouse Mural Station. That was
okay.
That's a 50-50 split between ourselves and the Marshall County Community Foundation.
Okay. I just wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Sure.
That was the only question.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, can I get a motion to approve the claims as presented?
This is Sue. I'll move to approve the claims as presented.
Do you have a second to that motion?
This is Tom. I'll second.
Thank you. So we have a motion that's been made by Sue to approve the claims for June. It was seconded by Tom Uhas. Paul, could you poll the members, please?
Certainly, and I'll go alphabetically in reverse this time. Tom,
Aye.
Rich,
Aye.
Sally,
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
and Paul. Aye. All ayes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on in the agenda, Town Manager's Report. Jonathan had presented a copy of a written report. Jonathan, would you like to review the highlights from that, please?
Helps if I unmute, right? On Stellar Projects, the council decided to postpone the ribbon cutting that was scheduled for June 20th. They did come in and finish landscaping, well, 99% of landscaping over the weekend, so that was good to see. The building itself would be fine, I think, to move forward with. It was more over concern with having an event there that is, well, it'd be fun, is probably not necessary. Conditions, we just decided to hold off again. Don't have it rescheduled yet. Sometime this summer we'll still do it. But like I said, construction itself, substantial completion was back in May, and they're just getting through those final punch list items still. I don't think there's anything major left, just a lot of small stuff that had to be cleaned up. As far as NDOT projects, not a lot of activity on our end, basically going through the engineering process, trying to get to phase 3 engineering completed, trying to get environmental review processes completed on all of them. They're all basically kind of in that phase 3 engineering and environmental review process. So not a lot of activity on our end, mostly being done with the engineering and environmental sub-consultants right now. And Cavalier Park, Karen's probably been up there more recently than I have, but still looking at June 30th for substantial completion there. I think most of the equipment was in place. Restroom was wrapped up. They were just doing some final grading and seating were the main things left the last time I was up there. I think that's it on the Stellar projects. For the county Stellar projects, we submitted the application for a trail extension or connection through Slate and Cass Streets that I talked to a little bit about last meeting. We submitted that to MACOG for review. Once MACOG is okay with it, they will pass it along to NDOT. I haven't had any questions or concerns from them yet. I think it'll go through okay. And our second county Stellar project will be a park project. And we had our quarterly conference call with Oprah Thursday and just kind of went through timelines. And they do on there, and they would like to see all those applications by early next summer and get those funds hopefully spent for construction within that following year. So that's kind of the timeline they'd like us to follow. I think we still need to work some more on our plans, but we have $600,000 kind of earmarked for us for a park project through Okra in that next year. So, then I think I had an update on municipal utilities.
Hold up for just a second on that, if you will,
Sure.
please, Jonathan.
Mhm.
Just to make sure that there aren't any questions, and just as a refresher for my memory, and I forgot to update the cash flow on this, at our joint meeting, the Redevelopment Commission agreed to increase the funding for trail projects by how much? Do you recall what that amount was?
I believe this trail project is $400,000 and it was a 20% match. If someone has a calculator handy.
Let's
Is it
see.
100,000. We need a calculator for
Oh, busted.
It's a, and
Right,
never mind.
Sally?
We won't go to e-learning. Let's just, so it was 80 that and I'll update the cash flow statement on that. So, okay. Any other questions on the Stellar projects, either
Yeah,
local or county?
Rich, this is Tom. I do. What's the scope of our park project for 600,000?
Originally, it was to be place and complete replacement of the playground equipment that's near the Lions, the depot building, the Lions Club depot building in the park. And park playground equipment is very expensive. A lot of it was going towards that. And then also just some new seating and sidewalks and seating area that would connect the pavilion there with the parking lot and the depot. But I did present on that over at the Lions Club, and they had some concerns just with their existing view to the lake with the building and things like that, that I think we need to have some more input on it and probably revise it some. But the funding's there for a park project, and even if we wanted to get even more creative with it, I think we've got a year to kind of figure that out. But it's basically $600,000 towards a Culver Park project.
Thank you.
If I recall correctly, Jonathan, that play equipment too had accessibility components to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, there are a couple parks in our area that have done some neat things with full accessibility in their playground. So we did want to try and touch on that as well.
Okay.
Okay, Rich, just
Any
back
other questions?
clarification, back to your point on the from the minutes from last month, under 7B is where we talked about the joint town and CRC meeting, and we agreed to assume the $80,000 portion of the town's future funding commitment for the Stellar Trail project over the next 4 years. So that's how we put it, and then we did our vote.
Okay, good. Thank you, Paul. All right. Then Paul and Jonathan have been working on a project looking into the possibility of some municipal utilities. They were working with a consultant and made a presentation to the town council, or not to the council itself, but individually, conference council members. So, Paul and Jonathan, thank you for looking into this. This is one of the projects that also appeared on our priority list when we did our strategic economic development plan last fall. And it was one of the ones that I think Paul was interested in championing, being the champion for. So, Paul and Jonathan.
Can somebody summarize for me what exactly we're trying to do? Are we going to be a reseller of their electric service?
No.
To end users?
Jonathan, if I can just jump in real quickly, I think I've got a little bit of a synopsis. So
sure,
there is an opportunity, and there is an opportunity for a town our size to shift away from NIPSCO to another power supplier, electric power municipality, become our own municipality. And with that, we get to set our rate of power. We were able to acquire it at a lower price and a wholesale price.
As a reseller, then. Yeah, we would be a reseller of electric service.
We are responsible. we become physically responsible for all of our infrastructure within the annexed area. You know, what that gives us as a town is what Bremen has, what Argus has. It gives the ability for the town to influence and control its current expenditure on electricity and future expenditures on electricity based on demand and, quite frankly, based on the price of supply. As background, NIPSCO is probably one of the highest providers when it comes to cost in the area, in the state. The opportunity would have an immediate impact on the town of probably roughly a savings of around 10%. So as Jonathan had put in the document, that 10% for, say, the academy is $100,000 a year. That 10% for every homeowner is 10% off of their bill. And the 10% for the school is about $22,000 a year based on their electrical expenditure. So we had done a lot of work, you know, understanding what our power profile was and what the impact would be for us.
Yeah, but how would it physically work? We would have to put in all new telephone poles underground and above ground. We'd buy them from NIPSCO?
No, the latter part. We would negotiate with NIPSCO. We would purchase the infrastructure in place. We would be responsible for maintaining that infrastructure going forward. And we would have we would own it. We would have a monitor set up at one point that monitors the power coming from NIPSCO into the town area. And that is what we would be using to track our expenditures. At this point, and Jonathan, you may want to jump in, but at this point, we have gone through and identified what it would take to convert out, what it would take for us to maintain and run a system that has the same reliability, service, and dependability for our current customers as well as future. And we believe that will have a big impact today, as well as avoiding cost increases which are coming, and make it even more palatable or more attractive going forward. And that is to businesses that might want to come here as well. It can give us a cost advantage.
And we would have trained employees for installation repair?
We would probably do again, that's a little further forward. We've looked at it. We'd probably do an acquisition of shared services where we'd buy that from a not to be named power supplier to us, and we've dialed that into all the cost projections that were presented to the town council. We've used the worst case scenario financially, and that's where we came up with the 10% savings today. And we did dial all that in with it. We didn't want any surprises of how we would go to assume this, but we would actually have that. We'd have contracted services come in and do that. We wouldn't be adding to the town employee role, and we would have qualified trained people maintaining our system.
And you're saying Argus does this now?
Argus has this, as does Bremen. Argus does their own. They have their own people that do the work. But part of why that high-tech wire company went to Argus is because they have cheap power. And those $60,000 a year jobs that are located there are a result of that.
Hey, Paul, did you talk about, so I think the academy and us as a school corporation, we are in the queue, which is a list to be a solar provider to NIPSCO. We don't know that we're acting on it or not, but I was thinking the academy was potentially going to act on being in that queue. By going outside of NIPSCO, I'm sure that would jeopardize us being in the queue for solar.
That would, but I would tell you that the solar option is just as strong as we become a municipal utility. Again, our discussions, that is actually a much more viable function, because other towns and municipalities that have done this have gotten solar parks as a result of it. So we're not surrendering a multi-source and renewable source of energy by doing this.
Okay, good answer. Yep.
And how many years has Argus and Bremen or Bourbon, whichever you said, been doing this, and what's their percentage of savings?
Argus and Bremen have been doing this since the 80s. They had their own municipality, so they had their own power system that they've done this. Bremen has the lowest, what I know about Bremen in talking to them, they have the lowest cost of power per unit in the state. As they describe it, there's a reason why they have all this high-end manufacturing in their location. That's one of the reasons. I want to steer clear of giving percentages. I think it's best for us to talk about what we look at initially when we weighted everything in, that we would still see everyone across the board in this town would see a 10% reduction, whether you're the school, the academy, ACPI, or you and I living in our homes. But that's a little further out. Now, Jonathan has the immediate hurdle in front of us to talk about, and I'll let you do that.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Paul covered a lot of the background there and has been leading this whole discussion and done a lot of work on it. But yeah, tonight, what I'd like you to consider and what I'm requesting is that we think our next step is to enter into discussions with NIPSCO for what that buyout of the equipment would look like. Obviously, any proposal would come back to town council, and we would keep redevelopment posted if there's anything redevelopment related on it, obviously, before any final decision would be made. But I sent a proposal from Cronin Associates, which is a CPA firm who specializes in utilities in Indiana. We ran into Buzz during discussions over the East Shore Corporation, and he was on the other side of the table then, but we'd like to work with him on this program moving forward. He has a proposal for us. I'd asked for the Redevelopment Commission to make a motion to approve an engagement letter with Cronin Associates for financial advising services on this project. I take any questions you guys have about that proposal.
And Jonathan, the proposal is a not to exceed between $3,500 and $7,000, as I recall.
Yes.
And it's on hourly billing and out-of-pocket costs.
Correct.
And their experience in doing this elsewhere.
And this comes out of the CRC money because the future plant may be in the TIF because people benefit.
Right. So I think I said in my report, obviously Culver Community Schools, Culver Academies, and ACPI are the biggest power users we have in our current territory and would all stand to benefit. ACPI is obviously in the TIF district, as are all of our businesses that would also be looking at that hopeful 10% rate reduction to make this change.
And when we did the profile, we went through all the businesses in the town. Almost everyone, if they spent more than 20 to 30,000, were saying this would be great because they just see their prices going up, especially Park and Shop. It's a very electricity intensive business for them to maintain their foods. The reason we're participating, obviously the town is interested as well, because whether you're a senior, whether you can't afford, any resident would see an impact on this. But obviously all of our TIF districts would see the impact in their business.
So have you looked at how Argus's rates have increased over that 40 years?
We looked at the rate history from where we would be getting this power increase, or our power purchase, and right now we are spending what, on average, the people that are buying power from them were spending back in 2010.
Another
they
thing.
have.
Go ahead, Paul.
No, and the second, and I think even the more important piece isn't just the reduction, because it's a headache to go assume this and make this transition, but the fact that you'll be avoiding cost increases. And I say I don't want to. I'm not overselling it, but the fact is there are many cost increases that have come out, and part of why ACPI and the Academy were so interested, because even though they're big users, they don't get a break.
Oh,
And
I know. We're at cream price all the time.
Yeah, so it gives us more control, and quite frankly, the chance to have better savings going forward by avoiding a cost increase.
I think in the pro forma that was presented to the council also, I don't think I'm speaking out of turn on this, but I think the 10% was a conservative number as you go forward. It's anticipated that NIPSCO will be putting in for a rate increase within the next year or two, and that will be consistently a picture we see in the future. They are an investor-owned utility, so they're driven by their return on investment for their investors, a profit margin, basically. The municipalities that do this don't have the same compunction to make a ton of money to pay back their investors. Basically, the people own
Sorry,
them
Rich, I was gonna, yeah.
are the the taxpayers and the members in town. So, go ahead, Paul. Sorry.
Just to put on top of that point is the charter. Their charter is lowest member rates, electric utility rates. So by charter, they don't, any for whatever reason they have additional funds at the end of the year, it rolls back into the rate structure. So they've seen rate decreases. So their charter is very much focused on that, and it just gives the town the ability to control a cost that is significant.
Right.
And
today, what we're looking at, we're not making a decision on buying the farm on this today.
No, I know. I
think it needs further study and it needs negotiation. And I think it falls to CRC. I think CRC is a logical candidate to do this because of the impact on our businesses and potential business recruitment as we go forward.
right.
So
I have a number of points if I can get in there.
go for it, Tom.
First of all, how would we be guaranteed that we ourselves wouldn't have a cost increase simply because our supplier increase goes up?
Yeah, you. Sure, I'm still on.
In the contract.
so there are factors outside of control. If the country passes a carbon tax, it is given that carbon tax increase goes out to every power generator out there. So we would get that. The utility, in our pursuit of a municipal utility, and I'm being careful with the words, they showed us their structure on where they generate and get their power. They showed us where it is locked in, and they were confident enough in showing us over the next 30 years that regardless of whatever the federal government does, if they put anything on the power generation industry, which would affect everybody, that they will continue to be one of the lowest, if not the lowest, power supplier in the region, multi-state region.
And so as Paul's saying, that's if we purchase from the same supplier that, an Argus or a Bremen does. But the big difference is always going to be with a municipal utility versus investor owned, is that the investor owned is driven by profits for their investors that they need to return funds back to. When it's municipal, it's up to the council then to set those rates. And what you see in most communities is that they're not, looking to pay for anything else outside of that. There's no, profit motive for that. It's basically to pay for the service. So
okay, well, that indeed was one of my other questions is, and I'm not sure I fully understand how the water and sewer works in town. However, I think there is a water and a sewer reserve. Would this also be where we're making a few dollars for reserve? Do you get what I'm at?
Yeah.
Is there in 10 years, are we going to have $100,000 in reserve that's sitting there?
Yes. So I don't know those exact amounts, but that was something we've already discussed with Buzz, and he's familiar with. There is a formula that you would have to follow starting this.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There are reserve requirements to starting your own municipal utility. And we still, and Buzz calculated that, and still within, we believe we can do that.
Can people please silence their phone unless they're speaking?
No, it's me.
It was Tom. We got it under control.
Okay.
Why'd you have to have all these kids?
Yeah.
Now I lost my picture too. Where'd you guys go? All right, I can still hear you. All right, I have still a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead. I
Keep going.
kind of forget where we were.
Is this company that you're negotiating with or speaking with, is it the same people that are doing Argus and Bremen now? Not that I'm looking to find, I just wonder, I mean, there's a history there.
So yeah, we would, if we start our own municipal utility, we would need some guidance from, and we'd have to purchase electricity from a wholesale supplier. And
Okay.
we have had a few discussions with their supplier.
Okay, my next thing, do we have any idea of what the cost of acquisition of this infrastructure is going to be? And what's the return on investment for that?
Yeah, that's built into that rate decline of 10%. And again, Ed Buzz gave us a broad outline based on some information that Paul was able to put together. So did a total count of the number of households in the area. We got bills back from the Culver Community School, Culver Academies, ACPI. They counted the number of gas stations, did a profile of the different retail establishments in our community, asked for how many homes were year-round versus seasonal, and they took all that information and the size of the town, the number of street miles, and made an estimate of the value of the existing poles, lines, equipment, etc.
We won't repeat that value in the open meeting.
No, I don't want to know. I'm just looking at, to me, it's going to cost a lot of money to buy this. We're going to save a lot of money. Is it going to take 2 years to recoup it? Is it going to be 20 years to recoup it?
So the way we think we could save 10% over immediately, basically, would be to finance that purchase, Tom. So yeah, you would have a large upfront capital purchase, but being backed by a municipal utility, just like our water or sewer system, and knowing that you've got that steady income coming in, A, you can get a great rate, B, you can finance it over a long period of time. And doing so, you could still take all that and account for a 10% rate cut immediately.
Do you know, does Argus own theirs free and clear?
I don't know. I would assume they have some debt, but I'm not sure. Yeah. Like Paul said, they've been in the municipal utility business for so long, they didn't have to do a purchase from NIPSCO. They've always operated locally.
Okay, then I have one last thing if I could.
Sure.
Okay, I feel that because this has an impact on not only our businesses in our district, in our redevelopment district, but also is going to be affecting everybody in the town, everybody that's serviced by NIPSCO. I don't really know what their geographic location is here. I haven't seen it on a map, but I think that this should, and my understanding was from listening to the town council meeting, that this was going to come to us to be a split. So I'd be in favor of doing this if we had a split with the town council. Or is this 3,500 half of 7,000? Is that what you're asking for?
What I was asking for, Tom, what made sense to me was we'll also have extra expenses the way our town attorney agreement works. We will be billed hourly by Jim Clevenger to work on this with us too. My assumption was that the town would handle his fees, which will be similar. And if CRC could handle the financial advisor's fees, that seemed like one way to split it, or split them both 50-50. It doesn't really matter to me. It's just not a separate agreement with Jim. It'll be an additional hourly fee.
Okay, that's my input, is that I feel this benefits both, and I think that both the town council and CRC should have some skin in the game on this one. So
sure.
Carry on.
Thank you, Tom. Any other questions? I'm going to go through the roll just to see. Sally, did you have any questions or comments? Okay, well, Sally is unmuting herself. Sue, did you have anything else?
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Okay. Karen, did you have anything else you'd like to add, comment on, or question?
Nope, I gave my drill.
Okay, thank you. Sally, back with us yet?
Yeah, mainly what I said was you know, the question that I had was who does the repairs and the upkeep on the system, and that was answered. So I'm good.
Okay, good. Thank you. Paul, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Just one thing, that this is a permanent forever change financially, in that even after what's funded and is put out on, taken out in a bond or debt, if we successfully do this, once that's paid off, it's still ours at a low cost. So we would change for the town pretty much forever its cost of electricity. And that's a big thing. That's all.
Okay, good. Thank you. Open up any questions from anyone else participating in the call. Jonathan, any comments or closing comments from you?
No, I just like reiterating Tom's question as far as split. I think the way I presented it was that CRC would do the financial advisor agreement and take on that portion, and the town would take on the additional legal expenses that would be covered under our attorney contract, but will be additional hourly fees, if that's okay. If not, I can suggest something else.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, is there anyone interested or willing to make a motion on this?
This
I
is
guess I have one
Paul.
question, Jonathan.
Sure.
So you're going to do a bond for this? So it's potentially the CRC and the town would be reimbursed from the bond revenue for this fee, or no?
That's pretty far down the road, and I would say not at this point. I mean, once that would move forward, it would be the utility customers that would pay back that debt.
Okay.
Paul, you were going to say something?
Sure, I'll be glad to make a motion on this, that CRC does approve an engagement letter as outlined by Jonathan, with a not to exceed the amount that Jonathan, which was it you said? 30? Is it you're talking about 35,000 each?
7,000 is the consultant.
7,000 total. Okay, the entire consultant fee, and that's assuming that. And again, I want to clarify my motion before I put there. That's assuming that Jim Clevenger would also be that fee would be also the same as Clevenger's.
I don't know that that's the case. Buzz listed a range of hourly fees depending on what specific thing we ask him to do, whereas Jim's is a consistent rate. So even if they're engaged for the same amount of hours, there's not a guarantee that it'll be the same fee. So yeah.
Okay.
They're similar on paper, but Buzz did have that range and which is typical. Jim also has some range in his depending on the complexity of the work, but this particular item he's considering all one category. So
okay. So again, I say my motion is that we approve an engagement letter with Buzz Crone and Associates, and I'm going to keep it simple with a not to exceed $7,000, and that's the assumption that the town council will be picking up Clevenger's fees for this related project.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been made. Do I have a second to that motion?
This is Sally. I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion that's been made by Paul to approve the consulting services agreement with Crone and Associates for exploring further the municipal utilities with a not to exceed amount of $7,000. That motion has been seconded by Sally. Paul, could you poll the members, please?
Any discussion?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah.
Right now, this 50-50 thing is important to me, and I'm for this. if another motion would be made down the road here. I'm probably going to vote no on this unless it's 50-50 between this company and what the town expends on attorney fees. I'll go up to the 7,000, but I'd like to see that as a split between the town and CRC. So that's my discussion. You go ahead with your motion.
Well,
so Tom, let me add a little clarification just from my perspective. As we go through, as Jonathan said, NIPSCO could say no. We could start the negotiation with them. We might wind up having to switch out some of our legal support going forward with NIPSCO. And I'm just saying this, Jim may be the right guy to take this all the way forward. He may not. We may have to switch to a specialty utility rates guy or firm. Not sure. But, this initial part going forward, I don't know. I don't think the town and Cronin Associates are going to be doing the same amount of work. So I understand what you're saying. I'm just giving you this as a little bit just as a thought, and this is context.
So Paul, are you open to amending your motion to say that the CRC will front or will support 50% of the cost in this endeavor for the engagement letter and legal services at this point?
Yeah, if that gets us forward on this, sure. I would amend the motion as follows: that we support the engagement letter, and that CRC assumes 50% of the engagement between Cronin and Clevenger, not to exceed $7K, splitting that up, the other 50% carried by town council.
So, and just to clarify, the CRC commitment is not to exceed 7,000, not the total cost.
Right.
Okay. All right. So is that motion clear to everyone? Paul withdrew his first motion and has offered a second motion. Does it need any clarification before or is there a second?
I will second that new motion.
Okay. So we have a motion that's been made by Paul and seconded by Tom. Are there other questions, comments, or does that motion need clarification? Hearing nothing. Sally, I'm sorry.
No, unless you want to say, instead of Mr. Clevenger, just say attorney's fees.
Sure. I'll state that as attorney's fees, town attorney's fees.
Okay, so we'll close discussion on this and move the motion. Paul, could you please poll the members?
Sure. And I'll start with Rich.
Aye.
Sally.
Aye.
Paul. Aye. All right. Sue.
Aye.
And Tom, I got an aye.
Aye.
All ayes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jonathan and Paul, for your work on this. I'm very optimistic that this will be a great thing for our residents and our business community.
I had one last thing.
On the utilities or wayfinding?
No, wayfinding, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I just show those redevelopment paid for the implementation of this project that's been some time in the works, and just wanted to share these. Hopefully you guys can see these. Osterbahn and Sons were in town and painted these signs last week, and I was pretty happy with the result. Kind of a first-time experiment on doing this particular setup. And I thought they've come out pretty well. So hopefully everybody got a chance to see those, and that is all I have for my report, unless there's any other questions.
Any questions for Jonathan? If not, moving on to old business, a progress report from Marshall County Economic Development Commission. I did not see Jerry on, but I know Greg is there. Jerry, are you on?
Yeah, I am. And
oh, I'm sorry.
Yep. No, you're okay. I'm on by phone. Rich.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so what we'd like to do today is go through the draft plan, business attraction plan, knowledge-based businesses as a part of the commitment, and with the expectation that in July you'll have a final draft, or you'll have the final version of that plan for implementation. So with that being said, I know that Jonathan has a couple of slides to go through. And to see those up, I'll hand the baton over to Greg.
Okay, thank you. And Jonathan has the slides there. First, I just wanted to thank Jonathan and excuse me, Rich and Paul for their input and their contribution to this process, and then also Bill Githens and Marty Osterman also took part in these discussions.
I'm having a hard time hearing. I'm sorry. Could you speak up, please?
Sure. I don't know if that's any better or not. But,
yeah, a little bit.
Okay. And I don't. Jonathan, do you have those slides there? Or? Okay, there we go. And then this is just a high-level overview of the initial draft. You'll be receiving that here after this meeting. We'll be sending that out to you. But we wanted to go over just an overview of it first before we get into the details. This first slide is the goal that was acknowledged during our discussion. We came up with this. It's based on the goal that was in the 2014 comprehensive plan. It says facilitate knowledge-based business and business park development to attract new employers, expand the local workforce, and diversify the tax base. As we worked on this attraction plan, it became obvious to us that this needed to tweak just a little bit more. Jonathan, if you could flip to that next slide then, please. What we've done is we would recommend that we use this goal instead. It's to attract knowledge-based businesses and entrepreneurs to capture capital investment and diversify the local tax base. We think this is a more accurate, more concise statement of what it is we're trying to accomplish with our attraction plan. And then we can advance to that next slide then. The metric for this to measure the goal is to be attract 5 to 6 knowledge-based businesses in Culver in the next 5 years. We think this is an attainable goal utilizing the attraction plan as we've come to develop it. The next slides we'll get into.
Hey, Greg, Greg, just a moment. By way of information for CRC benefit, as the plan evolves and matures, the expectation is that between years 5 to 10, that number would increase significantly. And why? The reason for that, or the result of why the significant increase in business attraction during the second 5 years is you've already established a lot of the what I would call created the atmosphere, created the awareness, created these type of businesses in the circles that they run are now being leveraged as partners in the attraction activity. So typically what you normally see in a business attraction plan over a short period of time, you are gaining speed, gaining traction in your plan, and then it becomes much easier as the plan matures going forward. You see this with respect to NCDC's business attraction plan. Within the last 2 years, we're gaining a lot of traction. There's still more to be done, but you can see the evolution of the plan itself. Thank you.
Okay. And in this first of the 3 strategies is prospect for and deliver leads. This will be the main aspect of it. What Culver will leverage 3.5 years and over $70,000 that MCDC and the Plymouth Redevelopment have invested in establishing this relationship with Notre Dame's Idea Center, Idea Week, and the McCluskey competition, and other events like this. That's where we will be doing most of our prospecting and developing leads. On the next slide, then. I think, okay. And then this next strategy is the storytelling phase.
Greg, can I get you to back up, please?
Sure.
Just a little bit. Can you go through the various action items within each of those slides so CRC gets a little bit more breadth of what's actually occurring within each one of those prospecting and then the rest of the strategies?
Sure. Yeah, they'll be in Action 1, participating in Notre Dame University programs at Idea Center, Idea Week, and McCluskey competition. Presently, MCDC is already in that space, so we work with Judge and work in the awards part of the McCluskey competition. Participate in the South Bend Elkhart Regional Partnership Startup Board and other regional entrepreneurs. These are the discussions they have on venture capital ideas. Network in the venture, in the Elevate Venture programs and South Bend Vault pitch events, and also investigate future prospecting opportunities not listed. That would be outside of this area. Down the road, we would look at both Purdue and Rose-Hulman have incubator programs there that we could prospect at.
So just a side note, if I can take and drill down a little bit further for Rich and the rest of the CRC members. Within this platform, all these different venues, organizations, events, there is where startups, entrepreneurs, knowledge-based businesses reside, whether that's at University of Notre Dame, throughout those events. Idea Week, Idea Center is actually the old term just slipped my mind, but it's the entrepreneurship center that was developed in Notre Dame. The other ones are venues and activities that surround this whole idea of startups, entrepreneurship, and knowledge-based businesses. Some of this would be new space for MCDC, but although it'd be more focused space as we go forward. So when we talk about prospecting and developing leads, economic development is an effort in developing leads. It's the idea of the full of your pipeline. The hope is one of having several of those businesses land and actually close deals in Culver. So this is where we, once again, prospecting is trying to find leads. Developing leads, once we get those, it's an effort of managing those leads, either in a hot, active, or pending type of scenario. And we have some metrics associated with that. So it's just a little bit further in terms of strategy. You have to prospect to have some type of deal closures at the end of the day. Go ahead and take on, continue, Greg.
Okay, and then the next slide then talks about implement a public awareness campaign. This would be the storytelling phase of the plan, where we tell the story of Culver is looking for to attract knowledge-based entrepreneurs. It explores, where we're going to tell that story. What are the outlets for that to build awareness? We got local print, radio, newsletters. Also, there will be some industry trade magazine sort of things. But we'll develop the story and then frequently update this do those outlets. One of the things we want to talk about here too is we want to capitalize on that successful mindset that Culver has developed that has led them to be stellar and walk-friendly designations, focusing that same mindset on attracting entrepreneurs. And this is where we would develop that into our storytelling and get that message out. Then if you could flip to that final strategy then. Strategy 3, develop a business attraction tool. This is where we would on paper, develop move-in ready sites, do the pre-engineering, the cost, the timelines that it would take somebody to move into these sites, develop that list of sites that we could attract businesses into. This is also where CRC Culver is going to develop and explore what kind of incentives they have to offer businesses that we could use to close the deals. Remember, this was just a high-level review of what the initial draft plan is composed of. That'll be going out here shortly in much more detail than what we've covered here. Any questions?
So, Greg, you will be emailing copies of this, Greg or Jerry, to members of the commission so that they can review it and then filter comments or questions to you directly?
Yes.
Yes, Rich. And just for clarity, what you have is a very high level on the slides. The steps and strategies and tactics underneath each of the 3 strategies are much more detailed. They talk in specifics of different venues, different tactics, and activities that kind of give you a full breadth within each of the strategies. So, for instance, one of those is probably about 15 steps long, if I'm not mistaken. But we didn't feel we had enough time to cover everything in depth. We're going to push it out there and get the group to give us their feedback.
Oh, but those additional steps that you talked about will be included in the document you distribute for feedback. That's
yes,
a question.
They will.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay. Any questions at this point in time by members of the commission?
You want me to do a roll call around asking everybody, Rich?
This is information only.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, we're not taking a vote on it. It's just to see if there are people who
This is Paul. I've got 2 questions and a comment. The first question is, what does one of these companies look like when it gets here? Give me an example. What are we trying to recruit? What does that look like?
Yeah, the list of companies under SIC codes will be defined within the source document itself, but it could be a company that is pledging from Idea Center, which is once again the incubator at Notre Dame. It could be a company that is a successful participant within the McCluskey competition. It could be some knowledge-based business. It could be so for instance, Paul, MCDC, MCDC currently has the most prestigious award given through McCluskey. It's called the Greatest Social Impact Award. And the reason why we have that is because the largest number of business plans, competition-wise, are sourced into that venue. The one company we made the award to this year was a company that did cancer detection, new way of producing a device in the medical arena with some of their expertise, whether that is in the medical field and the engineering field itself. This is a candidate that is ready to go into the marketplace. if not just into the marketplace, but some of their expertise is in the software arena. So their platform is twofold. One, they're going to be making devices that docs need, and then two, they're going to be licensing software throughout their business cycle. So that is an example of a knowledge-based business. Clearly, there are much more examples out in today's market. We have captured some of those, but remember the market area that we are focusing our efforts are of a university type venue. Once we build that, we go to Purdue and to Rose-Hulman as well.
Okay. So my next question is, you're not looking for something like Recon, similar to like Recon Media up in Plymouth, or similar to what Miller is doing, Rob Miller is doing out in Knox, and you're not looking for a small data center. So you're looking for strictly companies, startups that are a few people that are coming out of an incubator, and you're not looking at other standalone, technology businesses and knowledge businesses like those, right?
Once again, if that business is within that space, within those venues, either Elevate Ventures, Idea Week, Idea Center, then those are our candidates. MediaCon, I'm not sure who they are. Are you talking about the advertising company that's in Plymouth?
Recon Media in Plymouth. That's a again, part of what I'd written was asking, what are you defining as a knowledge-based, a knowledge worker, a knowledge-based company, or a tech company? But I don't want to tie up the time here. I just want to get some clarity before I read what you guys send out.
Yep. Yeah. We have that. We have those definitions within the source document. And I think we're
just trying to understand what impact and what type of businesses you're saying we're going to put our effort into and get in the next 5 years, the next 5 to 6 businesses. Is that 100 new jobs that average $70,000 a year? Is that just trying to understand it?
Sure. Why don't we take a look at the source document? It's much more defined there.
Sure. And probably go ahead, Rich.
Finish up. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. And this is just an observation for myself. I think there's a lot of potential between the county and the town to work better together. It would help if you give us information ahead of time. Greg, on the last call on the status report, I've made it a point to say we should get this information on the Friday before. I was not able to dial in, so I didn't see a damn thing that you guys put up there. I think if you want us to work together better, it's better to get us information ahead of time. And
sure,
I give you, Jerry, one other thing. I mean, look, I'm no genius. I put a lot of information that I sent back as feedback to you guys. And quite frankly, I didn't until I heard you say it right now. Didn't even know you got it. Of the 6 people I sent it to, didn't hear boo. So in my past experience, just sharing this with you, my past experience when I get that kind of response, either people aren't interested or they don't know what to do with it. So
let me respond to that, if you don't mind.
All right, we're going to put closure to this discussion. I think in the interest of going forward, we will submit the questions in writing, and then we will ask, between Jerry, Greg, and myself, will set a timeline for either a draft response in writing, so we can get it back to people to consider beforehand. Does that seem equitable to everyone?
Sure. Just looking to work better together.
I appreciate that, Paul. I understand your concern. So, Jerry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I mean, I think we could go for a long time, but I think the concrete answers is you have more stuff written and in background information. Unfortunately, Paul cannot see the slides tonight, which may have been more helpful in his being able to see some information that that is in his mind. So let's work on that going forward. Is that acceptable to everyone?
Yes.
Okay.
Sounds
Jerry, Greg?
Obviously so, but I think from the standpoint, it's a draft. We have a month to answer questions and to make sure that there's some clarity as to what TRC can count on in terms of their business development plan.
Okay. And our next meeting, I'm just trying to pull up a calendar here. So our next meeting is the 20th of July. I would like to suggest that at a minimum that the week before that, the 13th of July, we have back the draft response on questions you've received, and we will get those responses back to you by the 22nd so that you can get us the plan by the Friday the 24th. I'm sorry, back up on that. So we'll get you the responses by the 15th with your plan back to us by the 17th for our meeting on the 20th. And we can work those out a little bit more in detail in an email or exchange on that, Jerry, okay? If you need a little bit more or less time, but let's try and set some calendar deadlines on this.
Well, I think Greg had some calendar deadlines, or at least what we're looking for in terms of response back. So,
okay, good. If you share that with Jonathan and me, we'll be sure to communicate that.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Greg. Anything else at this point on that? Okay, thank you. Moving on, next item on the agenda are the progress reports from Culver on the two projects, the navigation and then also the website development. I know both Tracy and Danielle had sent me progress reports this afternoon. I forwarded them. I recognize that they were late in coming. I think I'm trying to pull up the yeah, I'm not finding them to pull up. I know from the website development, Danielle, are you on the phone? I guess I should have asked that first. I didn't think she was going to be able to make the call this evening. There are 2 or 3 new businesses that we're working with on the website development. Ringer's Golf Cart, pardon me, not golf courts, is interested and agreed to sign up on this. And
Tammy Schaefer Holistic.
Yes, Tammy Schaefer Holistic is another one that agreed to sign up on it. Quite honestly, we're running into some difficulties with the Legacy Hair Salon. Basically, the responsiveness and follow through has not been good from that business. So that's where the websites are going. I think I circulated to the members of the commission a resource that we had discovered as we looked for a consultant to help with the economic development planning downtown redevelopment group out of Ohio. They have provided a draft response or program. Jonathan, Tracy, and myself have reviewed that and Danielle and have given them some feedback. We're waiting for some further responses. We hope to have a finalized report at the July meeting. And that hopefully will give us some direction on also where we're going with, or would like to go with the partnership with Develop Culver, or at least consider going with that partnership. So, were there questions on the progress reports that have been provided? And again, I apologize for their late distribution.
No question, Rick, but it may be easier for Tracy to shift it, to drop that the navigator format and just go, because that's really, it looks like that's kind of come by events and just stay focused on the
I think it's going to transition back to our initial discussions, but impacted by COVID. So yeah, I will suggest that to her, and as soon as we have a final version of that report, I will circulate it in plenty of time, so you'll have a chance to read through it. It's a work in progress at this point in time, but it's I think so. Jonathan, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right. And also, Danielle, since she's not on the call, she on the mural ideas, which was the next thing on the agenda, we'll address that at a future meeting. But I think she's had several discussions with the artists group that did the fire station mural. I mean, feedback on that has been very positive. And looking at other opportunities, some other grants that are available with the for some other resources. So there are some ideas on the table, just on the drawing board, I guess, for some other murals in town. So we'll bring some information back on that at a future meeting. Tom, facade grants?
Yes. Max's Playhouse was being submitted tonight for approval of the claim. I don't really have anything more than that, other than the claim will be in, well, we already approved it. It was in tonight's claim. The entry here for the Collins building, I was contacted and I spoke with Chris Collins and Al Collins. There's some work they want to do on the exterior of the Collins building. I'm calling it the Collins building. However, I have not received an application at this point. They're basically, sounds like they're going to replace a lot of the exterior wood. And if you do look at it pretty closely, it does look like it's not weathering too well. And the other thing that I wanted to inform you, I have personally spoken to the two new businesses that I'm aware of in town. This Healthy to the Max, which is the smoothie place where the ice cream place used to be. I spoke to the owners there to make them aware of our facade grant program, which they weren't aware. And also, I don't have the young man's name that is taking over across Max to the Axe, or Max Axe. And I spoke with him too regarding, what a facade grant, what it would cover. And he was very appreciative of that. So I've tried to reach out to the new businesses, and hopefully we'll be getting something in from Collins in the near future. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom or discussion on the facade grants? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the annual presentation that CRC needs to make to the other taxing entities in our area. These are things like town, Union Township, the school. Last year, you may recall, we engaged who was then called Umbaugh and Associates, Heidi, to do put together a presentation for us. We videoed the presentation, and have captured that presentation. It's a big file because it's about 25 minutes long. And I did not want to post it on YouTube, but it would not email, and I was going to put it in the Dropbox and did not get it. The Dropbox wouldn't accept it either, but I'll get you a copy of that so you can review it. I think, with the exception of the figures from 2019, it is accurate. It talks about, if you may recall the presentation, it talked about sort of the history of TIFs, what they're designed to do, how the tax works for the other bodies, and it goes through the, an analysis of what is the impact on those other taxing bodies. I think it dispelled the misunderstanding that the dollars that we get from the TIF district or TIF properties would go directly to those taxing bodies if CRC were not in existence. And they explained that the difference is on the incremental value, and that incremental value, might not be there without the economic development things that have happened. So what I would suggest, because it was a significant cost to do this last year. And my suggestion is that we get an updated document that updates the financial components of it from 2019 to 2020. So basically what we're spending money on projects on is what that difference is. And then provide the video with that document to the other taxing entities, and we can do a again, sort of an online meeting to do that presentation, and then make the video available to them if they'd like to take it back to their boards. We offered to do that last year. None of the taxing bodies took us up on it. So does that sound like a viable plan to people, as opposed to engaging, they're now Baker Tilly, to redo the plan or do the presentation?
Makes sense to me.
Sounds good to me, Rich. We'd save some money.
Okay. Sally, Paul?
Yeah, updating it would be better than reinventing it.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. So I will take that as a direction from the commission that's what we will do this year. And I will get the financials updated and offer the video to the other taxing entities. That was, I think, what is on the agenda. So polling member input, Sally, since your face is on the screen, anything you would like to add to the agenda or talk about?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay. Since I'm not as good with the alphabet as Paul, I'll sort of jump around. Sue, did you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Paul, anything?
Just something to consider next month. I think we go back to in-person meetings next month in this rollout, right?
We'll see.
I think that when we do, I have to say I've gotten a lot of feedback from people in town that they enjoy that we have the ability for them to dial in, because sometimes they can't make it, or the fact that it's posted after, so they can go back and listen to it or watch it. And I think we might want to consider offering this even when we go back to in-person meetings. Now you have to, and I'm saying this out loud because Jonathan and you guys may have to look at this, but that, having it an ability where somebody can look at it for 30 days afterwards and it doesn't replace minutes, and you may have to limit people's ability to comment, and you have to be in person to comment, but I've gotten feedback that people that would not have normally seen our meetings because of this have been able to do it. So that's just what I wanted to mention for next time.
That's good, Paul. And I think the town council has gotten similar feedback. Jonathan or Karen, am I wrong in assuming that we're looking at continuing to record the meetings and make them available in some way?
Yeah, like you said, Rich, we've got the same feedback for council meetings, and the format will probably look a little different because when you're all in the same room, I don't know what devices people will have. And I know there's a setting you can use to allow to kind of control that feedback. If nothing else, one of us or two of us will have laptops so that we'll get some video coverage. And we'll try a couple things and see what works. But yeah, I definitely think people have appreciated having this option, and we'll try to keep it going in some form once we get back together. And then the note I wanted to share on that was just, I don't think we'll, even if we do meet in person, come to the council room at Town Hall in July. I think having a little more space would be better. So we're looking at either the library or the beach lodge main level as two options, and trying to continue that option. Like you said, Paul, if people don't want to come, that they can call in or join online as well.
Good. So useful feedback. Thank you, Paul. Okay. Tom, I'd asked you, Karen Schumann, are you still with us, or did you?
I don't think I got asked.
I'm saving you till the end.
All right, save me to the end. You Huss.
After we all go off the air. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Tom, do you have anything you'd like to say?
People are watching CRC because there's nothing else to do on a Monday night because they can't go out of their houses. So
well, you're the one who's pulling up these videos and watching them later and then sending me notes on them. So I don't want to say about setting a life, but
I had sent the members of CRC the pictures that I'd taken around town. I just had some comment about the flowers that have been planted around town. And I did a little bit of investigation into this, in that I drove around in the golf cart last night and I counted every business I could think of. And I was up around 40 different planters that I could pick out. Some of them, like at the Lions Club, there were 3 or 4, and apparently the Lions do their own. So I subtracted that. So I just did a little math here. And if there were, because they're basically petunias and something that looks like lettuce. And a lot of them don't look, I planted a lot of flowers in my life, and a lot of these don't even seem to be a full flat, but let's just assume it is a flat. Usually a flat of flowers will run somewhere maybe $14, $15, $16. Let's make it $20 a flat times 40 flats. That's $800 for 40 flats of flowers. We had approved $4,200 for this project. Rich has told me we have not received an invoice yet. I'm not sure where the $4,200 even came from, but let me continue with my math. $4,200 minus $800 leaves $3,400. If we paid somebody $20 an hour to plant these things, that's 170 hours. That's 4 weeks to plant them. So I don't know, or 170 man hours is the way to look at it. So I don't know. I know I've talked to a couple of the businesses, seem to have them, some don't have them. Some are disappointed that they're strictly the same thing throughout town. They're petunias. There's no stringy hanging things. If you guys have been down to Logansport over the last number of years, I mean, they've got flowers that look like they came from a botanical garden. So anyway, I just have some concern that I think that, you know, for $4,200, we should really be wowed by what's there. And I don't feel like I'm wowed when I see what's in these planters. So that's just my member comment.
And as our earlier discussion indicated, Tom, I agree with you on a number of points. I did talk to Amber, and they were provided with the equivalent of probably about 5 flats of flowers. I reviewed the proposal, and it wasn't a firm 4,200. I think it was up to. So we will require or request a detailed invoice when we get billed on this. So.
Well, this is Sue. Now that Tom brought that up, I agree. When he sent those pictures out, I've gotten feedback from some of the businesses that, and like the ones in front of the collective, you know, it's a big container, but it's the flowers barely show. I was in Rochester today, and you know, they always do, very similar to Logansport, a very nice job with their flowers, and consistent color is always what they recommend to do an impact, but something that's got some height as well, which I thought I asked for, but I didn't, ours are just barely showing above the container.
Okay, so we will, as
Rich,
the,
this is
go ahead, Paul.
just real quick. The what did we approve wasn't Elizabeth Garden going to do for the whole summer? It wasn't just one set, where they were going to maintain flowers and do this through the whole summer?
Reading from the proposal. I projected estimated cost for planting the pots and window baskets that are already in place to be approximately $4,200. This would include a stretch of storefronts on South Main Street, starting at the Collins Building, all the way to North Main Street, including the Culver Cove entrance, as well as Lakeshore Drive, the Town Park, and the corner stores on State Road 10. A total of 13 pots, 8 large planters, and various sizes of 21 window boxes. So that was the proposal. Okay. So it was an approximate. As I said, I will when the invoice gets submitted, I will ask for backup documentation. So I mean, if they're all
and we have not been built. We have not been billed yet, right?
No, we have not been billed yet. No. So let's see if there's more to come. So I we'll have the discussion as we move forward when we have the invoice. Is that all right with people?
Yes.
With that,
Sounds good.
Has anyone given feedback to Elizabeth Garden, any of the businesses that we know of?
Elizabeth and I had some early on discussions on this that she did not follow through with. So let me just leave it at that. I'd asked her for the specific plan and to notify me before she started, none of which happened. So
she's not very open to feedback, in my opinion, my experience and opinion.
My statement, I think, speaks for itself. So, so anyway, yeah, I did try and, I tried to organize this with her beforehand. And offline, I can give you some other feedback or information on it too. So
No, I'm just trying to understand, and I certainly don't want this to turn into an adversarial situation for anybody. So just trying to understand.
I don't think anybody that what's there, it's colorful, but it certainly, I don't think it meets anybody's expectations for what the proposal entailed and the cost. So
I'll make a motion to adjourn if we're to that point, or do we have citizen input?
I don't have any. Is there any citizen input? Not hearing anything. Is there a second to Tom's motion?
I will second that.
Okay, any discussion? If not, Mr. Secretary, would you mind polling the members?
Certainly. Tom Uhas?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
Myself? Aye. Sally?
Aye.
And Rich?
Aye.
And Karen, you always get the vote on this.
Aye, yes,
So you can move on to your school board meeting.
yes. I'm hearing them knocking at the door, so.
Okay, so our next meeting is July 20th. Thank all of you for your participation and interest. And we will get you out some information before well in advance of the next meeting for your reading pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.